Hi everybody, I'm Steve. If you don't know, I teach the best Ruby and Rails classes in the world with Jumpstart Labs, so if you want your team to level up, you should come talk to me. I'm giving a talk today called Anti-Oppression 101, so let's kick this off. Martin Fowler defines DSLs as computer languages that are targeted to a particular kind of problem. For example, Rails is sort of a DSL to attack web applications. Specific languages help you solve problems because their focus is narrower, which means they have issues with generality, but they're better to attack certain problems. So we have a certain problem in computer science, and that's a lack of women. So this is a graph of people that got bachelor's degrees. The red line is the computer science degrees, and the other lines are the other sciences. In 1984, women dropped sharply. So luckily, we have a DSL to talk about this kind of problem, and it's called social justice. Basically, this is a DSL for discussing equality in social relationships. So there's been a lot of research into this field already, and we can take these principles and apply them to our field to help tackle this problem. These are a bunch of women software developers that I follow on Twitter, and I would like to see more of them come around. I mean, we actually have a pretty reasonable number of women in this crowd tonight for a Ruby conference, but most conferences I go to are very, very low. Traditionally, social justice has been sort of associated with leftist political movements, but actually comes from Thomas Aquinas way back in the day and a lot of religious things. So this isn't like a left versus right political thing. This is about being humans towards other humans and treating people like people. There was a Reddit thread that had this question: what's the worst thing you can call a white male? Like, is there equivalent of the N-word for white people? And privilege was the word that got everyone super upset. So we're going to talk about that, because that's actually the biggest thing in this whole topic, is the idea of privilege. So privilege is the idea that society accommodates you, not the other way around. If you're the normal, if you're the default, and you don't need to think about your social interactions, you're privileged in that given situation. And it's about how when other people deviate from that norm, the way that affects them. So people that are privileged and people that are unprivileged live on the same planet, but in two different worlds. So me as a man, and if there was a woman standing next to me, we'd be seeing the same situation, but it would be filtered through our life experiences, and so we would see two different things. There's this cognitive psychology experiment that was done involving this gorilla. So these two teams of people in black and white shirts, they showed a video and said, we're going to have them pass balls back and forth to each other, count how many times the passes occur. While that went on, they had a gorilla walk in the middle of the screen, and they asked people afterwards, did you see the gorilla? And over half of the people did not see the gorilla because they weren't focusing on that. They were focusing on the passes. And this is the hard thing about privilege, is it's hard to notice if you're not paying attention. Humans are not good at noticing things they're not paying attention to directly. So this isn't just about women. There are tons of different axes of identity. So there's gender, sexuality, race, class, ability, and a bunch of other ones. Ability, think about like disabled, basically. If you notice, I have privilege in all of these simultaneously. So do many software developers, which is what makes it so hard to understand this privilege. Intersectionality is the idea of how various of these categories interact. So for example, if you are a black woman, you have two different kinds of, not disabilities, but you are underprivileged in two different ways simultaneously. This is really important. Racism and sexism is about discrimination plus power being oppression. So Etsy offering $5,000 for women developers to get involved in software development is not sexist. Because women do not have the power to oppress other people because they do not have privilege. Imposter syndrome is a very common situation that's not directly related to these kinds of things, but often happens. And it's you feel like you're faking it, so you're not good enough for the people that you are around. And so this happens a lot of times whenever you're at a conference and you meet someone who's a woman with another man, and they introduce themselves together, and you assume that she's only here because she's his girlfriend or wife, and not because she's a programmer in her own right. And this is one of the ways that we unconsciously alienate women. This also happens since we're trying to get so many women into computer science. A lot of times we tend to assume that women programmers are beginners, and we need to explain things to them. And many women in our field are very technical and much more hardcore than me or you, and they should be treated as such. So it's important that we don't do that. This is my favorite excuse for being sexist. I put naked women on my slides. I love women. How is that sexism? Right? So just because you care a lot about women doesn't mean you're not doing terrible things anyway. Also, apologizing honestly is important. I'm sorry that you were offended is not an apology. It's just not. So you should be apologizing for what you did. And also, only if you actually are sorry. If you're not sorry, then don't apologize, because everybody can tell that you're not actually sorry. So anyway, I want to see this trend reverse. And so I think that we can do it. The problem is that it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. There's a million tiny microaggressions that we commit on a regular basis that end up in their sum alienating women, and we're sort of going about this problem kind of in the wrong way. So if we all sort of rethink the way that we socially interact with women and other kinds of minorities in these different situations, I think we can really help improve the gender disparity in our field. So thanks.